Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I'm going to talk about how to fire people well. So firing people, I know it kind of sucks. You're probably not excited about it. You need to do it. Maybe you've known that you need to do it for months, and this is just something that finally needs to happen. So what I want to walk you through is the mindset behind it. So how to come to the decision and feel good about it, the prep that needs to happen before you have the conversation, and then the actual process on how to have the conversation and how to handle it well. Now, the first thing when it comes to mindset is actually you don't fire them, they quit. So if all goes according to plan, they will actually quit. Now, I remember the first time that I saw this happen, I was working for Student Painters, and my manager at the time, I had this manager. So my manager, I was talking to him about how I wanted to fire one of my managers, and he was just the bad apple on my team. And I was like, you know what? I got to fire him. Joel, I got to fire him. He's like, no. You don't need to fire him. You need to give him more time. I was like, no, I need to fire him. He's not good. He's bringing down my team. I need to do this. He's like, you're not doing it. I'm like, Joel, you don't understand. I'm firing the guy. He's like, all right, hey, at least let me do the conversation. And I'm going to handle this conversation. And by the end of this, he's going to quit. It's like, wait, what? No, there's no way. I don't believe that. It's not going to happen. And sure enough, 45 minutes later, this guy, he says, you know what, Joel, Chandler, I just don't think this is right for me. I don't think this opportunity is right. I think I'm going to have to leave. I think I'm going to have to quit. To which we both were like, oh man, that is so horrible. We are going to miss you. I can't believe this. Best of luck, here are the next steps. So if you handle this process well, in all seriousness, the person will actually quit, or it's just going to become inevitable. So there actually isn't this weird firing conversation that has to happen. And that leads me to the next point, which is if they're surprised, you did it wrong. So if they don't see this coming, you have mishandled the process. So there's performance improvement plans or PIPs, whether that's a 30-day or a 90-day performance improvement plan. This is a written or a verbal reprimand along with here's what you need to do to improve your performance over the next 30 or 90 days. So a lot of times that's the best first step. But even if you don't do a formal performance improvement plan, because obviously a performance improvement plan, that only happens if you think that the person can turn it around. So if you don't think that the person can turn it around, it's not worth doing. But even so, you need to be given feedback upstream of saying, hey, you're not hitting your targets. This isn't working. What are you going to do to improve? So this needs to go upstream, and you need to be given feedback even before this conversation happens. Now, another couple things around the mindset of firing people well is I always am generous. And I find that if you're always generous when you let someone go, it's way easier to make the decision that needs to be made. So I'm going to give them severance. I might give them a couple weeks. I might give them a few weeks. I'm going to be very generous. I'm going to try everything that I can to make sure this is as smooth as possible for them. Now, here's the thing. Oftentimes when you let someone go, I have never had a situation where I let someone go and then they were worse off after it. Sure, maybe for a week or two they're scrambling to find their next job or things like that, but almost always they find a better position that's better suited for their skill sets and a company that better suits their needs, things like that, and they're happy and they will actually thank you that you let them go. And this is, just kind of a slight reframe, and it's a little bit funny, but also I think there's legitimacy to this, and I truly believe in this, and that's that you're not firing someone, you're freeing up their future. Okay, so you can have a freeing up their future conversation. This is not a firing conversation, and maybe that'll help you feel better about having the conversation. But in all seriousness, you are freeing them up to do bigger and better things. And like I just said, oftentimes it will be a better fit for their skill sets, and that's going to help them grow. Because if they're not performing, if they're not doing well, that's weighing on them. That's very stressful for them. It's not productive. It's not conducive for the company either. So you just need to rip the Band-Aid off and move on. Before you have the conversation, you need to make sure that a couple of boxes are checked. So you need to make sure that they've signed all the legal documents. So non-compete, non-solicitation, non-disclosure, make sure all those things are signed. Make sure that their role is systematized. So they're creating systems around their role so that you can easily pass this off to someone else. If you need to check out a video, I've got a video on how to create systems or how to systematize any job or business. Check out that video. Make sure that they're following that video to systematize their role. Now also, you might want to plan for their replacement. So sometimes I'll start recruiting. I might even hire their replacement and bring them in and get them up to speed because I want as little interruption as possible between when I have to let this person go and when that next person is going to be coming in there. So you might want to also hire their replacement. And then lastly, and this video is not legal advice, so disclaimer, not legal advice. Depending on your state, things like that, you just need to look into the law and look into the legal side of things because some states require you to have written warnings, depending on whether your state is an at-will employer or not. There's all these different kind of legal ramifications and steps that you need to take. So definitely look into that before having this conversation. Now, when it comes to the actual conversation, here's how you do it. First, you want to make sure that two people are there. So this is important from a legal and HR perspective is two people need to be present so that this is just, if anything goes wrong, that there's always two people there. Preferably, you want to have this person's manager run that conversation, and then you also have HR there. I realize that you probably are at a small company or you might be at a small company. So it might be you, the business owner, and then their manager present, or you, the business owner, and the HR person, but have two people there no matter what. If the manager is not comfortable having that conversation, sometimes I will shield them from that and I'll run the conversation. But quite frankly, as we grow and as your company grows, it's important that your managers and leaders know how to have these conversations and know how to handle these situations. Now, also in terms of timing. So you need to put these conversations, if at all possible, I like to put these on a Friday afternoon. This is a total downer. If you have this on a Monday and then on Tuesday you have to announce to the whole team that someone got fired yesterday or someone quit or left the company or whatever that thing is, I just want minimal disruption as possible for the rest of my team. So if I do that on a Friday afternoon, I know that I can take care of my business. This person can take care of their business. They're not humiliated. They don't have to go in front of the team, all those things. There's also a full weekend for this to kind of die down. So when people come in on Monday, it's not a distraction because they've already processed it. A lot of people need time to process these things. So do it on a Friday afternoon if at all possible. Now, when it comes to the actual conversation, there's three things that you need to cover. Number one, have a strong opener and be very clear from the start. One of the ways I like to open these conversations is to say, hey, this is going to be a very difficult conversation for me, and I'm sure it probably will be a difficult conversation for you as well. So you're setting expectations that, hey, this is a difficult conversation, and then you go straight into it. Do not beat around the bush. It's kind of like standing at the edge of a diving board. If you stand at the edge of the diving board and you look down and you're looking down and then you wait and then you wait and you wait, you're going to chicken out. You're going to climb back down the ladder and you're not going to jump off the diving board. So don't dilly dally. Don't wait. You want to build some rapport, or maybe you just open up the conversation, but then get straight into it. This is going to be a difficult conversation. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Number two, it's important that you clearly communicate exactly what's going to happen next. So don't feel like you got to go into a 20, 30-minute explanation of why they're getting fired. Quite frankly, at this point, it doesn't matter. You can give them that feedback later. But if you're giving them a lot of examples, this can turn into an argument or into oh, that's not fair. So it's, hey, we've made this decision. We need to move on. Here are the next steps. Here's what this is going to look like. Here's your last day. Here's how we're going to handle compensation. Be very clear, be very direct. This is so important that you leave no stone unturned. You explain exactly what's going to happen next. And then number three, at the end of this conversation, if there's any questions, things like that, at the end of this conversation, you repeat back exactly what's going to happen next. It is not possible to communicate too much or to over communicate in this instance. So be very clear about what's going to happen next, whether in regards to their access, logins, things like that. Be very clear about all that. And then send an email right after with exactly the next steps so that you have that in writing. Now, once you've had this conversation, this really kicks off the rest of what we call the termination SOP. So the termination standard operating procedure. This is a system that we have. It's very simple. I recommend that you have this system in your business as well. But you're kind of deciding, and maybe you've already decided, hey, this is their last day effective today. We're going to give them 2 weeks severance, 3 weeks, whatever that looks like, 1 week. This is really up to you and your company. But we're going to roll through the termination SOP. Now, our termination SOP has the prep. So what to do leading up to the conversation. We kind of already talked about some of those things. It has what to do the day of and at that conversation. How do you run that conversation? We just talked about that. It goes through what's the access that you need to remove from them. Now, it's important that you have this in a checklist because you can forget all the things that they have access to. So you run through this checklist. It has when's their last check, their last paycheck, payroll, canceling that last day, all those things, and just a bunch of buttoning up logistics on their way out the company. And then the very last thing is after termination, what are other random things that need to be updated? So chances are you have other playbooks or systems that needs to be updated. Probably you need to update the org chart if you have one. Public facing, have you removed their name and image off of your website, off of any other internal communication, external communication, all those things, but has that been removed everywhere? And that's kind of the nuts and bolts. That's the basics of the termination SOP. And then the very last step in this process, and this is kind of optional, this is something I like to do, especially if I don't think they have opportunities lined up, is I like to actually help them as much as I can with finding their next job. So I'll say, hey, what are you looking for? What are the positions that you're looking for? What are the companies that you're looking at? If I can help in any way possible, I'm happy to give an honest letter of recommendation. I'm happy to make an introduction, things like that. Now, obviously, this depends on how well the conversation goes and how well their time went at self-publishing school as to how willing I am to do those things. But in most cases, I'm very happy to do that. Now, I'm not going to lie to get them a job. I'm going to be very honest and give them an honest recommendation when I can. So there you have it. That's the termination process. That's how to fire an employee well. This is something I know it's not fun. You're probably not looking forward to it, but if you're watching this video right now, that person that you're thinking about it for, it probably needs to be done. So go ahead and make the decision, rip the Band-Aid off, change your mindset around this via the things that I just taught you at the beginning of this video. Go through the process, have the conversation, go through the termination SOP, and this should make it as quick and painless as possible. So I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this video? What do you do as part of your termination SOP? What's the longest that you've went with an employee that you knew you needed to fire, but you didn't do it? Do you have any crazy, funny firing stories? I'd love to hear those as well. Comment below. Let me know what you think. As always, click the subscribe button. Seriously, right now? Yep, I'm gonna fire you if you don't click the subscribe button. Click the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.